Okay, today I want to talk to those of you who are grieving. It is a tough thing when we lose somebody close to us, and grief can be just so all-consuming and devastating, depending on the loss, the way it comes about, how close you were to the person. It's really a painful pain. One of life's most painful experiences, when Lazarus died, even knowing he was going to raise him from the dead, Jesus wept. All right, it's just in our being, because death was never supposed to be part of this equation. Right? It was original sin that caused death to come into the world, but Jesus redeemed it, and we live forever, right, in Jesus. But while we're here and we're suffering loss, I want to give you a few ideas that you might find helpful. Number one, especially if it's a recent loss, allow yourself to be sad, allow yourself to grieve, and label it. Label it. I'm grieving. This is normal. This is grief. This is what it is. Okay, it helps to just label it. Otherwise, we just feel like we're depressed. No, you're grieving, and you're supposed to be. That's natural. It's normal. Second, reach out for support. There are some great groups out there. There's a program called Grief Share that's available in many parishes. Reach out to a Catholic therapist who can help you to process the grief from a Catholic perspective. That's really going to be really healing and helpful for you. If it was an untimely death, the loss of a child or something, accept the fact that you'll never fully understand it this side of heaven. We can't fully understand it. Again, it's original sin. It's the reality of evil in the world. It's just so many things, but we'll never fully be able to grasp and understand that. Accept that. Find consolation in God's will. Now, obviously, if let's say it's a grandparent who lived to 100, we can deal with that better, right? It was God's will. He gave them a beautiful long life, and they've gone home to God. Okay, that's easy. But what about when they are younger, or it's a person very close to you? God has a perfect will, an ordaining will, and a permissive will. But it's still God's will. And there's nothing that happens in the world that is outside of God's ultimate control, outside of his knowledge, and outside of his ability to redeem. So no matter what happened, accept it as God's will. My mom died at 93, and she had a lot of suffering leading up to it. So, and I prayed for a long time for God to give me the grace when that time came. I was real close with my mom. But I had to accept and thank God that he took her home, that her suffering ended, even though I really missed her and wanted her to be here forever, right? We want everybody to be here forever. By contrast, my dad died at 62. So again, having to accept that was God's will. I mean, my poor mom lived many, many years without him. And yet there was such peace in knowing that they were finally reunited. So find that consolation in God's will. I mean, my dog had to be put down last year, and that was very upsetting. But one of the things that I said, all right, God did not will our animals to live as long as we do. So, and I don't want to discount, like many of you are grieving the loss of a pet, and especially if you live alone. I mean, that could be a very painful loss also. So give yourself that space to grieve and to accept that it's legitimate to grieve over the loss of a pet. Now, I read something in a book once. I wish I could remember to give him credit, but a man who was talking about he had lost his wife. And one of the things that gave him consolation, which I thought was so beautiful, is that he saw his grief and suffering as a gift to his wife. Because if she had gone before him, she'd be going through that pain and suffering that he was going through. So he, by suffering it, spared her that fate. I thought that was a really beautiful way of looking at it, that our grief and pain is a gift to them. That being said, we don't want to be grieving and miserable forever, and your loved one doesn't want you to be. There's a time, we need that time to grieve. But for many people, it's very hard to let go of the grief and the suffering for a couple of reasons. Number one, they feel guilty. That means I didn't love the person. How can I ever be happy again? That would be terrible. But again, your loved one doesn't want you to be miserable the rest of your life. And you're never going to look back and say, oh, it was a good thing. Of course not. Of course not. But we have to let go of that guilt. All right? Sometimes you just feel so guilty to ever be happy again. And that's not what they want. That's not what God wants for you. All right? He has a purpose and a plan. And He has a plan for your future, even in this terrible loss. But sometimes we don't let go because that pain is the last connection we have. And to let it go is letting them go, it feels like. So we want to stay connected. If it means staying connected in pain, we'll take that. But I want to make some suggestions that as you're ready to let go and start to live life again, you can encounter your loved one in prayer. You can talk to them in prayer. You can encounter your loved one with God, the Blessed Sacrament. You can rejoice in those memories and talk to them and reminisce, right? That's part of a prayer, right? And you can trust in heaven that you will be reunited with them again. Now, I know a lot of people worry because it says in the Bible, we're not going to be married in heaven. Why would God give us such bonds with our loved ones if He intended them to go nowhere? It's ridiculous, right? So have faith and trust. But more than anything, again, if you are suffering, reach out for help. Don't try to do this alone. Even letting family and friends know, hey, listen, I'm really still grieving. To just be honest about that. But if it's going on a really long time, especially, I would recommend you talk to somebody, especially a therapist, because sometimes we may have had a challenging relationship with someone, and we call that complicated bereavement, because maybe we really had challenges. We had a lot of anger with them. We had a bad relationship. Maybe there was abuse. And now you're feeling this grief and suffering, and you don't quite understand it. And it's really hard to let it go or to process it because it's complicated. That's when you want to reach out to a therapist so that you can sort all of that out. So I hope you find that helpful. I know this time of year is really tough for so many people. Have faith. God has a plan. I know the year my dad died, he passed away the beginning of May. And I dreaded that first Christmas. I just couldn't imagine how I was going to handle it. And what I did was I just changed my perspective. And I remember thinking that I can look at how bad Christmas is going to be because my dad's not here anymore. Or I can look and say, I can have hope and faith for my dad's soul because of Christmas. So I just looked at it. It became a very beautiful and spiritual experience for me, looking at it that way. So just a suggestion for you, I will pray for you. I know that loss and pain are so painful and so difficult, but God is there in the midst of it. So I hope you find that helpful. God bless you.